The first time the security light turned on, I didn't think anything of it. That's what motion lights are supposed to do. Something crosses the yard, the sensor catches it, and the floodlight above the back door snaps on for 30 seconds before shutting off again. That was the whole reason I installed it. The backyard behind the house was huge and darker than it had any right to be. No street lights reached that side of the property. There was a wooden fence around most of it, an old shed near the back corner, and beyond that only a line of trees separating the neighborhood from a drainage ditch and a stretch of undeveloped land. Once the sun went down, the yard disappeared. The light made it feel manageable. It made the house feel occupied. The first time it happened, I was half asleep and on my way to the kitchen for water. I saw the white glare spill across the floor before I saw the yard itself. The whole back of the house lit up for a few seconds, and I stopped in the hallway and looked through the glass door. Nothing. The grass was still. The shed cast a hard black rectangle of shadow. The fence looked exactly the way it always did. No raccoon, no stray cat, no person. After about 30 seconds, the light shut off. I drank my water and went back to bed. The second night, it happened at exactly 2:40 a.m. That was the first detail that stayed with me. I only noticed the time because I had already woken up once around 2 and checked my phone. When the light flashed on again, I looked at the screen out of reflex. 2:40. I walked to the back door and looked out into the yard. Nothing. No movement, no animal, no swaying branches. The trees beyond the fence weren't moving. The air itself looked still. 30 seconds later, the light went dark. The third night I stayed up because by then the repetition had started to bother me. Not frighten me. Not yet. Just bother me in that stubborn way patterns do when they begin to feel intentional. I sat on the couch with the television muted and my phone in my hand, waiting. At 2:39, the yard was black. At 2:40, the light snapped on so suddenly I flinched, even though I was expecting it. The yard was empty again. I went outside this time, barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, and then the back step, feeling ridiculous. I stood under the light and looked around. The grass was damp, the fence was closed, the gate latch was still hooked the way I always left it. I walked halfway across the yard with my phone flashlight on and found nothing. No tracks in the soft dirt near the shed. No signs an animal had passed through. No broken branches or disturbed leaves. When I came back inside, I remembered the camera. I'd installed a small security camera above the back door a few months after moving in. It wasn't fancy, just something that recorded short clips when it detected motion. I almost never checked it. The next morning I opened the app and found a motion event logged at 2:40 a.m. I played it. The clip started with the yard in darkness. Then the light turned on. The grass lit up. The fence brightened. The shed came into view. Nothing moved. No person. No animal. Nothing crossing the frame. The clip ended. I played it again, then one more time, and then I went into the event details expecting maybe some error code or glitch marker. But there was nothing unusual there. Motion detected. Duration 0:0:31. I told myself the camera and the motion sensor had probably triggered each other somehow. Maybe an electrical issue. Maybe a moth had flown past the sensor too fast for the camera to pick up clearly. It was stupid, but it was better than dwelling on it. That explanation lasted until the fourth night, when I decided to watch the live feed instead of the yard. At 2:39, the feed showed the backyard in ordinary darkness. At 2:40, the light came on, and my phone buzzed with the alert. I opened the live view. At first, it looked empty again. Then I noticed the shadow. It was on the fence at the far right edge of the frame, long and vertical like the shadow of a person standing just out of sight. The problem was that there was no one in the yard to cast it. The light above the back door was behind the camera, angled downward into the grass. There should not have been a standing human silhouette on the fence unless an actual person was there, and if a person had been there, I would have seen them. I leaned closer to the screen. The shadow moved, not across the fence, toward the camera. It lengthened and sharpened the way a shadow does when its source steps forward. But nothing ever entered the frame. It was like watching evidence without the cause. Then the light shut off and the feed ended. The next morning I checked the saved clip. The shadow wasn't there. The recording showed an empty yard. That was the first time I felt something colder than curiosity. On the 5th night, I moved the camera a few degrees to the right. If something was staying just outside the edge of the frame, I wanted more of the yard covered. I checked the angle 3 times before bed. I made sure it was secure. At 2:40, the light came on again. This time, when I opened the feed, there was a person standing near the fence. Not a shadow. A person. Tall, still, centered just enough in the widened frame that I could see the outline of shoulders, arms hanging straight, head tilted slightly upward toward the house. They weren't close enough for details, but they were unmistakably there. I stopped breathing for a second. The figure didn't move. Then, very slowly, it stepped backward into the darkness beyond the fence line and disappeared. But the shadow on the fence remained for 1 second longer after the person was gone. Then, the light shut off. The recording saved. The next morning, the clip showed an empty yard again. No person, no shadow, nothing. I went outside and checked anyway. There were no footprints near the fence, no flattened grass, nothing on the muddy patch by the shed, nothing by the gate. The fence itself had no missing boards, no sign anyone had climbed it. The gate was still latched. By then, I had started sleeping badly. Not because I believed something supernatural was happening, not fully, but because my mind had fixed on the routine. 2:40 became an hour you begin to feel before you see it. I'd wake at 2:35 already listening. I'd stand in the kitchen pretending I was just thirsty. I'd keep my phone brightness low and wait for the alert. Night 6, I watched from the window instead of the feed. At 2:40, the yard lit up. The figure was there. Seeing it directly, not through the camera, was worse. The camera put a layer between me and the event. The window didn't. The person stood by the fence with their head angled toward the house, and even though I couldn't see their face, I knew with total certainty that they were looking at me. Then they stepped sideways, just enough that when I checked the live camera feed in my hand, they were outside the frame, still there at the window, gone on the feed. The light shut off. The yard went dark. In the morning, the saved recording showed no one. I unplugged the light the next night. That was my attempt at control. If the sensor or the wiring was part of the problem, then removing the power would end it. I pulled the plug on the interior circuit connection and checked twice that it was dead. Then I went to bed. At 2:40, the backyard lit up anyway. My whole body went cold. I walked to the glass door and looked outside. The figure was standing there again, closer than before, almost halfway between the fence and the house. For the first time, it raised an arm and pointed directly at the camera. My phone buzzed. I opened the app. The live feed was frozen on the yard, and across the image, in white block text that my camera system had absolutely no ability to generate, were the words, "You moved the camera." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. When I looked back up, the figure had moved closer again. It stood directly beneath the camera now, face tilted up toward it. The floodlight washed the top of its head and shoulders in harsh white, but the face was wrong. Not shadowed. Not featureless from distance. Wrong in a deeper way, like the light reached it and found nowhere to rest. It looked less like a face than an absence cut in the shape of one. Then the light shut off. The next morning there were no saved clips, no alert history, no message. It was as if the event had happened only to me and not to the system at all. But when I opened the camera app's live view, the angle had changed. The camera was pointing at my bedroom window from outside the house. I dropped the phone. I picked it up so fast, I almost cracked the screen. The view was unmistakable. The camera was no longer above the back door looking across the yard. It was outside somewhere, aimed inward, toward the second window from the left on the back wall, my bedroom. And in the glass reflection, faint but visible in the room behind me, someone was standing near my closet. I spun around. The bedroom door at the end of the hall was open, the room dark behind it. No one there. When I looked back at the phone, the feed had returned to the normal angle over the back door. I called the camera company that afternoon. I tried to keep my voice steady, while describing the issue as a software glitch, a possible remote access problem, anything that would make the story sound technical instead of insane. The support agent had me reset the device, change the password, check the mount, reinstall the app. We did all of it. He found no unauthorized logins, no firmware problems, no explanation for phantom text overlays or impossible camera angles. He asked if anyone else had access to the account. No, I said. He suggested replacing the camera. I drove to a store that evening and bought a new one. I installed it myself, higher this time, and angled it slightly downward. I kept the old camera in the kitchen trash can and almost threw it out. Instead, I left it there, with the batteries removed and the lens facing up at the ceiling. At 2:40, the new light turned on again. Because yes, I had replaced the light too. Same issue, new sensor, new wiring, new fixture, still 2:40. The new camera feed showed an empty yard. Then my kitchen trash can clattered. I jumped so hard I hit my hip on the counter. The old camera had tipped over inside the trash and was now facing me. Lens pointed upward through coffee grounds and paper towels. Its indicator light was blinking red. No battery, no power, still blinking. I left the house and drove around until dawn. The next day I called the police, and even while I dialed, I knew how it would sound. A person in my yard every night at the exact same time, not captured on recordings, turning on disconnected lights, sending messages through a camera app, moving a dead camera in a trash can. But I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. 2 officers came that evening. I showed them the yard, the new light, the new camera, the old camera in the trash. I showed them the motion logs that appeared and disappeared, the inconsistent clips, the times. They were polite, skeptical, tired. They asked if anyone had a reason to scare me. An ex, a neighbor, a trespasser. They asked if I'd taken any sleep medication. They suggested an animal triggering the light from outside the frame. I let them finish, because I knew how this sounded from the outside too. One of them checked the fence line with a flashlight, while the other stood in my kitchen, filling out a report. "Anything else odd?" he asked. I almost said no. Then I said, "Every time I wake up now, it's before 2:40. He stopped writing and looked at me. "Like anxiety?" "Like my body knows." He held my gaze for a second and nodded. But it wasn't agreement. It was the kind of nod people give when they want a conversation to end without being rude. Before leaving, they told me to call if I saw someone physically on the property again. At 2:40 that night, the light came on while they were still in the street out front. I looked through the back door. The figure stood by the fence. I called the officer's number from the report before the light had time to shut off. He answered. I said, "He's here." They were at my backyard gate in less than a minute. By then the light was off. The yard was empty. The officers searched anyway. Fence line, shed, side yard, the strip of trees beyond the property. Nothing. No footprints. No broken boards. No signs of anyone crossing through. One officer stood by the back door and looked at me with something close to pity. "If someone's out there," he said, "they're gone." He left, before I could tell him the worst part. The figure had been visible the entire time they were walking toward the yard. It had not moved. It had simply ceased to exist the moment the light went off. I stopped trying to sleep after that. Or rather, I stopped trusting sleep. I made coffee around midnight. I sat at the kitchen table with the blinds open, my phone screen dimmed, waiting for 2:40. The alert became less of a surprise and more of an appointment. Night after night, the same sequence. The pressure building in my chest around 2:35. The irrational certainty that if I looked outside before the light turned on, something would already be there. The light snapping on. Sometimes the figure by the fence. Sometimes the shadow on the boards, with no source. Sometimes nothing at all visible to the eye, just the awful sense that the yard had filled with presence even when it looked empty. The camera never saved usable proof. The logs were inconsistent. The app would show an event at 2:40 and then lose it. Once I screen recorded the live view and thought I'd finally captured the figure moving across the grass, but when I played the video back later, the area where it had been was smeared with digital artifacts, the image breaking apart only there, as if the camera had tried and failed to render what it was seeing. Then the light began coming on earlier, not by much. A minute one night, 2 the next, 2:39, 2:38, then back to 2:40. It felt like the time itself was testing me, seeing whether I was attached to the number or to the event. One night around 2:37, before any light had come on, I heard 3 knocks on the back door. Not from the yard. On the door. I froze in the kitchen chair. 3 more knocks came, exactly the same spacing. Then silence. I didn't move. A minute later, the light turned on and the yard was empty. After that, the boundaries started slipping. The figure was no longer always outside. The first time I noticed it indoors, I was washing a mug at the sink the morning after another sleepless night. The backyard was bright with ordinary daylight. The sink faced the window, and I happened to glance up at my own reflection in the glass. There was someone standing behind me in the kitchen doorway. I turned so fast I splashed water across the counter. No one there, When I looked back at the window, the reflection showed only me. I started keeping all the interior lights on after sunset. That lasted 3 nights before one of the bulbs in the hallway began burning out every evening around 2:30, and then working fine again by morning. I changed the bulb twice. Same result. The first real escalation happened on the 12th night. At 2:40, the light turned on, and the figure was already close to the house, far closer than it had ever been, standing just beyond the back step. I could see details now. Dark clothes, wet-looking fabric, though the night was dry, hands hanging too straight, height roughly mine, build roughly mine. Then it turned its head. I caught the profile for a fraction of a second. It looked like me. Not identical, not a perfect double, but enough that I instinctively stepped back from the glass. The phone buzzed. I looked down. No camera alert. A text message from an unknown number. "Don't hide behind the glass." I stared at the message so hard, my eyes hurt. Then I looked up at the yard. The figure was gone. My back door was unlocked. I know it was locked because I had started checking it 3 times every night before sitting down. Deadbolt, chain, handle. Now the deadbolt was open. The chain hung loose. I did not open the door to check anything. I spent the rest of the night in my car again, parked beneath a gas station light until morning. By then, I had stopped thinking in terms of pranks or software glitches. I still tried sometimes because the alternative was too absurd to name. But fear has a way of clarifying what logic cannot fix. Whatever was happening either understood the house or it understood me in the house. The next day I spoke to my nearest neighbor, an older man named Warren who lived 2 houses down and mostly kept to himself. I framed it as a question about trespassers and motion lights, expecting him to say he'd seen teenagers cutting through backyards or a drifter near the ditch. Instead, when I mentioned the exact time, 2:40, he went very still. "How long?" he asked. I repeated myself. "Have you seen anyone back there?" He looked toward my house instead of at me. "How long's the light been doing that?" "A little over 2 weeks." He nodded slowly, almost to himself. I asked what that meant. He took his time answering. "Family lived there before you," he said. "Didn't stay long? Husband used to walk the yard at night?" "What does that have to do with anything?" He said there was somebody standing by the fence every night. Same place, same time. I felt cold all over. "Did you believe him?" "No," Warren said. "At first." He rubbed at the corner of his mouth with his thumb. "Then one morning," he said, "I saw him standing in the yard before sunrise, just standing there, staring at the back of the house. Didn't move when I called out. I went over to check on him." He paused. "What happened?" Warren looked at me finally. It was his son. That made no sense. "What?" He had a teenage son, lived with him and his wife. Son had gone missing 2 weeks earlier. I couldn't speak for a second. Warren continued, quieter now. Police looked. Volunteers looked. Nothing. Then I saw the father in the yard one morning, and when I got close enough to see his face, I realized it wasn't the father. It was the son. I stared at him. "Same clothes he disappeared in," Warren said. "Standing in the grass looking at the back door. I blinked, and he was gone." The whole world felt tilted. "Did you tell anyone?" "Who would believe it?" he said. The family moved out a month later. I asked if anything had happened since. He looked at my house again. "The light's done strange things on and off for years," he said. but no one stays there long enough to talk about it. That night, I did something I should have done earlier. I searched the house, not for a person, for a history. Boxes in the attic crawl space, old documents tucked into a kitchen drawer the previous owner had painted over but not emptied. I found appliance manuals, warranty cards, a stack of school forms with another family's last name, and finally, in a plastic bin shoved behind insulation, a small spiral notebook warped slightly by moisture. Most of the pages were blank. The written ones were dated almost 10 years earlier. The handwriting changed as the entries went on, from neat and practical to compressed and slanted. The light turned on again at 2:40. No motion on the camera. Mara says she saw someone by the fence. Dylan thinks it's funny. He keeps saying it looks like me. Camera froze tonight when it got close. Woke up, and the camera was pointed at the bedroom. It knows when we're watching. Dylan went outside after it. The next pages were torn out. The final written page had only one sentence. If it turns the light on, don't go into the yard. I sat on the attic floor, holding that notebook, while the house creaked around me, and understood, for the first time, that whatever was happening had already completed itself once here, maybe more than once. I should have left immediately. Instead, I made another plan. The worst decisions in horror stories always look stupid from the outside and rational from the center. Mine was simple. If the thing in the yard responded to attention, I would set up more than one point of attention. I bought 2 extra cameras the next morning. One I put in the kitchen facing the back door from inside. The second I mounted upstairs, facing the hallway outside my bedroom. I synchronized all 3 to cloud storage and set an automatic upload to a separate account. I wanted redundancy. Proof that couldn't vanish. At 2:40 that night, every device glitched. The backyard light came on. The outdoor camera feed froze. The kitchen camera showed the back door and the bright wash of light beyond it. And in that wash of light, reflected on the glass, I saw someone standing in my kitchen behind me. I turned. No one there. On the upstairs hallway camera, a person walked past my bedroom door toward the stairs. My exact height, my exact posture. The clip lasted 4 seconds before corrupting. The cloud upload failed. The file was saved locally as a black screen with audio only. On the audio, you can hear my footsteps in the kitchen, the refrigerator hum, and then a second set of footsteps on the stairs above me. That was the first piece of evidence I had that survived. I emailed it to myself from 3 accounts. I sent it to a friend, without explanation. I uploaded it to a private drive. The next morning, all 3 copies were gone except the one on the friend's phone. He texted me asking what the hell he was listening to. I called him and told him enough of the truth that he came over that evening. He was the sort of friend who jokes at funerals and uses humor as a shield against anything too serious. And I thought maybe having someone else in the house would break whatever pattern I'd fallen into. It didn't. At 2:40, the light turned on. We were both in the kitchen. He saw the figure. No ambiguity. No, maybe I'm sleep-deprived. He saw it standing by the fence. He said very quietly, "Is that your reflection?" I said no. The figure took 1 step toward the house. The kitchen lights went out. Not the whole house. Just the kitchen. For maybe 1 second we stood in darkness lit only by the floodlight outside. In that second, my friend grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt and whispered, "There's someone in the room." The kitchen lights came back. No one there. The figure outside was gone. My friend left, 15 minutes later and wouldn't stay, no matter what I said. He tried to keep the fear out of his voice and failed. He told me to leave the house and come with him. I almost did. I didn't because I was tired, because I was angry, because some part of me had reached that dangerous point where terror starts hardening into obsession. 3 nights later, the back door opened at 2:40. Not unlocked itself. Opened. The deadbolt slid back with a metallic click while I was standing 10 feet away. The handle turned. The door eased inward 2 inches against the chain and stopped. The chain held. Cold air slipped through the gap. I could see the yard in a narrow wedge of white light and darkness. Then a hand appeared in the gap, not reaching in, just visible for a second at the edge of the opening. My hand. Same scar on the knuckle from when I cut myself opening a can at 17. I screamed then, not from bravery, not from rage, just because there are only so many ways the body knows how to react when reality opens a seam. The hand withdrew. The door shut. The deadbolt slid back into place. The light outside went off. I was on the floor in the hallway before I realized I had fallen. The next morning I found muddy footprints inside the house. Only 3. One just inside the back door, one halfway across the kitchen tile, one at the bottom of the stairs, then nothing. The upstairs hallway camera recorded no movement at all. After that, the house stopped feeling like mine. Every room had a second shape in it, a version of itself I felt more than saw. The kitchen at night felt too deep, as if the back wall had moved farther away. The upstairs hall felt like it could continue past the bedroom if I looked at it the wrong way. Mirrors became impossible to trust. More than once I caught my reflection looking at the window behind me before I had turned my own head. I slept less and less. Food tasted dull. Time stretched around 2:40, until the whole evening felt like a let-up. I started hearing the click of the light in my head when it wasn't there. Then, on the 21st night, the camera finally recorded something useful. I didn't see it live. I had fallen asleep on the couch by accident around midnight, fully dressed, phone in my hand. At 2:40, the light came on and woke me, but not enough to move. I lay there in that half state between sleep and panic, while the phone buzzed beside me. The next morning, I opened the saved clip from the kitchen camera. The back door was visible in frame, the yard bright beyond it. At 2:40:06, a man stepped into the kitchen from the darkness outside. He looked exactly like me. Not older this time. Not obviously wrong, just me, down to the t-shirt I had fallen asleep in. He closed the door behind him, very gently. Then he looked directly into the camera and smiled. He walked through the kitchen, past the island, past the table, and paused beside the couch, where I had apparently been sleeping, just out of frame. He stood there for 12 seconds. Then he turned and went upstairs. The upstairs hallway camera recorded him reaching my bedroom and stopping outside the door. He put one hand flat against it, like he was feeling the wood. Then the clip corrupted. The last frame that saved was his hand on the door, and a second figure, visible inside the bedroom through the crack. Someone standing where I should have been if I were in there sleeping. I packed that same day. Not methodically, not carefully, just the essentials. Documents, clothes, laptop, phone chargers, the notebook from the attic, a few things I couldn't stand to lose. I loaded the car by late afternoon and stood in the driveway with my keys in my hand, trying to decide whether locking the house mattered. At 2:17 p.m., for the first time ever, the security light behind the house turned on in broad daylight. I didn't look. I got in the car and left. I've been in motels and short-term rentals since then. The first week away, nothing happened. No lights, no figures, no 2:40 wake-ups. I started to think the house had been the problem, that leaving had severed whatever line had been drawn. Then, in a motel room 40 miles away, the lamp beside the bed clicked on at 2:40 a.m. Not the room's overhead light. The small lamp by the window. It stayed on for 30 seconds. I did not get out of bed. The next night, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from a camera I had left unplugged in the trunk of my car. The attached image was black, except for one reflected shape. A man standing at my motel room window. By the time I got the curtain open, there was no one there. I understand now what I was too slow to understand in the house. The light was never the source. The camera was never the source. The yard, the fence, the back door, those were just the places where it became visible. The ritual, the schedule, the invitation. 2:40 was not when it arrived. It was when it wanted to be noticed. And once you notice something enough, it starts noticing you back. I still check every backyard now, no matter where I stay. I still angle chairs away from windows at night. I still wake before 2:40 more often than not. Some places are quiet, some aren't. But it's the same sequence every time it comes close again. A pressure in the air around 2:35. An irrational certainty that I should not look outside. Then some small impossible sign that the boundary between outside and inside has shifted a little more. 3 nights ago, in a rental house on the far side of town, the motion light over the side gate came on at 2:40. I had not installed that light. I had not connected any camera to it. Still, my phone buzzed with a notification from no app I recognized. Motion detected, no icon, no sender. Just those words. I looked out the side window and saw a figure standing by the gate. He was facing away from me, same height, same build. When he turned his head, I knew the shape of my own jawline before I saw the face. I didn't wait for the full turn. I closed the curtain and left through the front door with my keys and nothing else. That's what life is now. Leaving before the thing outside becomes the thing inside. Staying ahead of the moment the light no longer needs a yard to cast its glow. But I'm not ahead tonight. Tonight I'm in another motel room, and there is no backyard. Just a parking lot, a low concrete wall, and a line of vending machines outside the office. No motion light connected to my room. No security camera mounted anywhere I can see. It's 2:38 a.m. The room is quiet. My phone is face down on the table because I don't want to see it buzz. And still I know. I know because the pressure has started. The same old pressure, as if the air in the room is slowly thickening around me. I know because I haven't been able to stop glancing at the window even though the curtain is closed. I know because every time the mini-fridge compressor kicks on, my heart mistakes it for the click of a floodlight. It's 2:39 now. I'm writing this because writing is the only thing that keeps me from looking. If I look, I'll see whether there's a light where there shouldn't be one. If I look, I'll see whether there's a reflection in the window that doesn't belong to me. If I look and he's there, then that means Whatever began behind my house has finally learned how to arrive without the yard. It's 2:40. There's no light, no buzzing phone, just silence. And now, from the bathroom, a soft electronic click, like a camera switching on.